Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Adult Faves. I'm Annie Bostrom, Booklist's Adult Book Senior Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom an hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title lists by typing the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with the section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Katie Vaughn, Marketing Manager at Bloomsbury Publishing, Emily Powers, Senior Marketing Manager at Beacon Press, Rudy Martinez, Director of Marketing, VP at Soho Press, and Julia Pohl-Miranda, Co-owner and VP, Marketing and Sales at Drawn and Quarterly. We'll kick things off with Katie Vaughn. Katie is the Marketing Manager for Bloomsbury Publishing's Adult Trade team, leading campaigns across genres from debuts and indie favorites to bestsellers and award winners. Before joining Bloomsbury in October 2022, Katie was the Marketing Associate for Riverhead Books. She was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and is now based in Queens, New York, where she can be found searching for the best coffee shops and restaurants the world's borough has to offer. Thanks for being here, Katie.
Thanks so much, Annie. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon sharing some of our adult trade favorites that have recently released or are hitting shelves soon. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see that we've got a little something for everybody this spring and fall. So our picks cover everything from myth retellings to historical fiction, apocalyptic sci-fi, dark academia fantasy, and beyond. So we hope these titles will resonate with all kinds of readers looking for propulsive stories. And with that, we will jump right in and kick things off with our first title on the next slide. So this is Honeysuckle by debut author Bar Friedman Tell. It just came out in March and was an instant USA Today and indie bestseller with starred reviews from Forward and Publishers Weekly, calling it exquisite and powerful. This is a darkly enchanting, fairy tale-tinged novel that reimagines the Welsh myth of Blodeuwedd, following Day, a girl made from flowers, and Rory, the lonely boy who will do absolutely anything to keep her from decaying. The tale begins with Rory's older sister Wyn promising to make him a playmate if he'll stop bothering her, a deal to which Rory eagerly agrees. When Wyn creates a girl made of flowers, doll perfect and Rory-sized for him to play with, he couldn't be happier. That is until he realizes that Day must be rewoven at the end of each season with new flora, or else she'll rot and fall gruesomely apart. As the pair grows older and Rory tries harder and harder to break this cycle of bloom and decay, Day wonders how much of her life is actually hers to command. This is a mesmerizing, gothic tale that explores the creator versus creature dynamic, the line between love and obsession, and themes of autonomy and consent, perfect for readers of Wayward and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, as well as botanical grotesque novels like Hazelthorne. This is perfect for any book clubs interested in retellings, fantasy, feminist lit, and dark academia, with New York Times bestselling author Ava Reed calling it a wholly intoxicating novel with the elegant lyricism of modern fantasy and the deep, dark roots of ancient folklore. Then on the next slide, we have Crescendo by absolute breakout author Jane Healey. In this sumptuous historical fiction novel, a piano virtuoso and his twin sister become rivals for a new spotlight, the adoration of a wealthy French patron, during the hot Parisian summer of 1957. We follow Max Kitson, a world-renowned concert pianist and former child prodigy, and his beautiful twin sister Natasha, who serves as his long-suffering manager and minder. When Max, now 20 years old, starts making uncharacteristic mistakes during performances, he abruptly cancels his world tour without consulting Natasha and retreats to the home of a wealthy French patron, Henri Comte de Montaigu. What Max doesn't realize, though, is that Henri is also Natasha's lover. As they all stay under one roof, the siblings vie desperately for the Comte's attention. While Henri woos Natasha with lavish gifts and trips to the ballet during the day, it's Max's music that draws Henri from bed each night. As the siblings go head to head, Natasha's long-held resentments and Max's deep insecurities threaten to shatter the relationship they've always held dear. Full of delicious family drama, a twisted love triangle, and a fascinating study of artistic genius and unbridled passion, Crescendo is the perfect literary escape to the concert halls, ballet theaters, and bedrooms of 1950s France. Best-selling author of The Favorites, Lane Fargo, calls it so immersive you'll feel like you're watching an Oscar-worthy film play in your head, and I have to agree. It's perfect for readers who love the rich settings of period dramas and the propulsive, gorgeously rendered writing of a modern classic. And then on the next slide, we have Agnes Lives, a debut novel by Hallie Elizabeth Newton. This is a day-in-the-life novel about a fading socialite on the hunt for someone to kill her before her next SoulCycle class. Nell Zink calls this book a tale of suspense, a statement, a cry for help, and a delicious tour de force, and Joyce Carol Oates calls it an astonishing debut as mesmerizing as it is unnerving. In this story, Agnes, our protagonist, is living in New York City in 2014. She's a former actress and model in her early 30s, and she has all the best handbags, all the best accessories, but on this day, she's essentially shopping for her own killer. We follow her as she hurtles across New York with the clock ticking. As you read along, the question becomes, does Agnes really want to die, or is she just so fed up with the misogyny and superficial expectations of her world that she just can't deal with it anymore? Think of her as a cousin to Patrick Bateman of American Psycho. Both are mission-driven, image-obsessed New Yorkers, but while Bateman is conquering the city with his greed, Agnes is staging a glorious swan song. This is a darkly funny, exuberant page-turner, perfect for fans of weird girl fiction like My Year of Rest and Relaxation and Miranda July's All Fours. And then on the next slide, we have The Salt King from beloved fan favorite author Natasha Pulley. With her signature biting wit and a beautiful queer love story threaded throughout, Natasha weaves a gripping apocalyptic sci-fi novel about belief, religion, and the power of myth. Jesuit priest Evelyn Brocken was born into a mining family in Harrod Water, a small, isolated salt town in England. At 16, after a mining disaster killed his family, he fled. But when a fellow priest is miraculously healed, only then to be turned to salt after a visit to the same town, Evelyn is sent by the Vatican to investigate. When he arrives, the town doctor Jericho tells him that the priest was not the only one experiencing strange cures, and may not be the only one in danger from a substance in the mine that the locals call salt light. Evelyn at first believes the myth of the Salt King and its light are the demonic, ridiculous beliefs of his former cult-like community. But the longer he stays, the less sure he becomes. As danger grows more and more undeniable, Evelyn and Jericho team up to protect the town, and our hero is forced to consider if his faith is strong enough to withstand an apocalypse. It's a breathtaking and beguiling novel following the struggle between belief and doubt, dreams and reality, past and present, perfect for readers of sci-fi, queer narratives, mythological explorations, and genre-bending fiction. And then on the next slide, we have Crocodilopolis, the second novel by John Manuel Arias, whose debut Where There Was Fire was a national bestseller and a Good Morning America buzz pick. This latest novel is a modern Cain and Abel story set in Costa Rica and Washington, D.C. that reads like 100 Years of Solitude meets Succession. Following an exiled politician returning home to feed his brother to the infamous river crocodiles of their childhood, it explores sibling rivalry and masculinity with the wit of a telenovela and the wisdom of biblical myth. Ocean Vuong calls Crocodilopolis a darkly intoxicating novel, at once mythic and wickedly contemporary, and Justin Torres calls John Manuel Arias a natural-born storyteller of the highest order. This is perfect for any readers or book clubs hungry for propulsive, multi-generational stories, and for fans of books like Rachel Khong's Real Americans, and legends like Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Isabel Allende. John is a literary force to be reckoned with and a true rising star whose work you won't want to miss. And then on the next slide, we have Moth's Blood, a dark academia fantasy debut from Lynn D. Jung. And this one isn't out until October, but I had to tell you about it now because it's such an in-house favorite of ours, and Lynn's followers are already clamoring for early copies. The story follows an ambitious alchemist, Larkspur Lee, who aspires to greatness at a secret Parisian university. Her carefully laid plans are thrown into chaos, however, when the school's immortal headmistress is murdered, seemingly by a cult that Lark has crossed an ocean to escape. She reluctantly teams up with a mysterious knight named Violaine to investigate, but nothing and no one at Université Murdrach is exactly what they seem, and Lark has secrets of her own that she's desperate to keep buried. As the university's dark history comes to light, old enemies loom, and alliances shift, our complicated heroine must ask herself, is the power she desires truly worth the terrible price? Chloe Gong calls Moth's Blood sinister, sexy, and in utter command over its own allure. And this is the perfect fall read for anyone who loves fantasy, magic, murder mysteries, secret societies, complex queer Asian heroines, and completely immersive, unforgettable writing. Bloomsbury's own Samantha Shannon recently posted about how excited she was for Moth's Blood, so this is a title to watch for fans of Samantha, Leigh Bardugo, Olivia Blake, and so many more. We also highly recommend following Lynn on Instagram and YouTube, where she candidly shares about her life as an author to her 40,000 followers. And then on the next slide, we have all of these incredible titles available as well that I wanted to tell you about quickly. So first up, we have The Blood Countess by the author of The Dark Queens, Shelley Puhak. This is a gripping work of true crime and feminist history about Elizabeth Bathory, the woman alleged to be the world's most prolific female serial killer, and how we've gotten her all wrong. We also have Tailbone, a beautiful and bruising debut novel about a teenager who runs away from her abusive home to a boarding house for single women, just as a global financial crash threatens the people of Seoul. It's an incisively written exploration of class, coming of age, and womanhood that gives you a glimpse into the underbelly of the fast-paced dog-eat-dog world of South Korea. With starred reviews from Booklist and PW, Alexander G calls it an unforgettable debut that marks the start of a major career. And we also have Break Room from one of the biggest stars in Korean literature, Mie Lee, the author of The Dallarget Dream Department Store. This latest psychological drama follows 8 contestants on a game show who are unsettled when they realize how they were selected, voted in as the biggest office villain by their respective colleagues. Darkly humorous and a sharp exploration of human foibles, this is a read that'll definitely have you considering your coworkers in a new light. And then we have Men Like Ours, a darkly funny debut novel about a South Asian enclave in New Jersey whose lives are shaken by a murder, prompting the women of the community to launch an amateur investigation. The PW Star Review calls author Bindu Basanath an impressive storyteller, and New York Times bestselling author Gary Steingart calls it the most promising debut he's read in decades. And finally, we have All Us Saints, which is out next week, a queer literary drama packaged as a 2-act play, following a haunted family who annually reenacts the violent night their lives changed forever. And on the last slide, that is it for Bloomsbury. Thank you so much for listening and being here today. I really appreciate it. Please don't hesitate to reach out via email if you're interested in any of the books I just mentioned. Happy to provide you with review copies if we have them available, so don't be a stranger. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Katie. We'll now hear from Emily Powers. Emily is Senior Marketing Manager at Beacon Press, where she focuses on academic and library marketing. She has been at Beacon Press for over a decade, and when she is not working, she can be found introducing her daughter to modern classics like Arthur, Clifford, and Frog and Toad. She has a degree in English from Lemoyne College and lives with her family outside Boston. Thanks for joining us, Emily. The floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for bearing with me. I am a little sick. Um, but for those of you who don't know, so if you could just go to the next slide, Beacon Press is an independent nonprofit publisher, and we have a long history of publishing serious nonfiction that challenges readers to think differently about major issues. Since 1854, we've published authors like James Baldwin, Octavia Butler, Judy Heumann, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, but I wanted to highlight several of our upcoming titles that I think will resonate particularly well with your communities. So next slide. And so first is Catching Sight by Denny Elliott. And this is part memoir and part behind the scenes look at the world of training seeing eye dogs, amazing guide dogs. I wanted to start with saying that I've gotten more unsolicited emails about this book than I ever have before. People who have received early galleys from bookstores or just somehow got their hands on an early copy telling me how much they loved it and couldn't put it down, which very rarely happens to me. But so Denny is an ethics scholar with declining vision who after decades of finding really creative workarounds to accommodate this. So people that in her life didn't fully know the extent of her vision loss, and she finally gets to a point where she can no longer safely navigate the world independently and decides to work with a guide dog. And so then the memoir gets into the whole process of guide dog training, selection, matching the dogs to the handlers. And it's so fascinating. Readers get an inside look at how these dogs are bred and trained, the astonishing level of intelligence and decision making involved with every small action that they take. You can go to the next slide. I can't quite remember. Yes, but people at Beacon, even lots of cat people, have fallen completely in love with Alberta, who is the yellow lab at the center of the story, who becomes both a companion and a collaborator with Denny. Um, there's so much love for this one. It's a perfect book club selection, and it comes out in June. Um, and so next slide, excuse me. Um, and this is another standout is Living Together, Reimagining Community in the Era of Disconnection, which is an essay collection that looks at communal living in America at a moment when loneliness, housing instability, and economic anxiety are all escalating. Um, but so what's really interesting about this book is that it pushes back against the assumption that communal living is like a millennial pipe dream or unrealistic or something, on the fringes of society. And the essayists really make the point that collective care and shared living arrangements may become increasingly necessary and desirable responses to what modern American life has become. The contributors include authors like Kristen Arnett, Kim Stanley Robinson, among others, and they all examine different forms of community and interdependence. And what's interesting, again, here is it approaches it not as, you know, a millennial fantasy that is something that everyone, aspires to, but could never actually make happen, but is something that's already happening across generations and communities. And it connects strongly to current conversations about affordability, climate resilience, mutual aid, and social isolation. So that one comes out in July. Next slide, please. Then we have In the Arms of Mountains, a memoir of land, love, and queer resistance in Red America. And this is one of the memoirs on our list that feels especially timely right now. So Cole was the first openly LGBTQ plus member of the Idaho legislature, and their memoir challenges simplistic narratives about rural America. And one of our taglines for the book is because rural America deserves more than just an elegy. And so the memoir traces their life from growing up on a guest ranch in Idaho to anti-apartheid activism at Berkeley, to eventually becoming Idaho's first openly queer state senator. It's deeply grounded in place, so wilderness, ranch life, isolation, and community all really shape the story. And one line that really captures the spirit of the book comes from Carole King. Yes, that Carole King, who said, one doesn't need to be queer to feel seen, heard, and empowered by this book. And it's a reminder that activists need to believe that the impossible can happen. So this one comes out in just a few weeks in May. So next slide, please. Excuse me. So Midstream by Kate Washington, and the subtitle is A Life Remade in 50 Swims. So this is a different approach to reinvention and identity. So this memoir follows Washington as she approaches age 50 and reevaluates her 23 year marriage and a life centered almost entirely around caring for others. So some of you may be familiar with her earlier work kind of about this particular topic. Already Toast was the name of her earlier book, but to connect with herself, she creates what she calls the 50 Dunks Project, visiting 50 different bodies of water before turning 50. And what could have been a simple travel or divorce memoir becomes something much broader about pleasure, embodiment, and reclaiming joy in midlife. The settings range from California rivers, swimming holes in southern France. And the book blends humor, reflection, cultural criticism, and nature writing. And we think this book will find a home with readers who want to reclaim joy as a form of resistance, which I really feel like is all of us. But that is out in July. And so next slide, please. So this is a very fun one. Um, The Lesbian Bar Chronicles, the living history and hopeful future of America's dyke dives and sapphic spaces. So this combines oral history, travel writing, queer cultural history. So the author, Rachel Karp, is one of the co-creators of the wildly popular podcast, Cruising. And in researching for this book, Karp travels across the country with her wife and her best friend, documenting lesbian bars at a moment when media narratives often claim these spaces are disappearing. And what they all actually found was more complicated, but also more hopeful, because they found not only were these spaces not necessarily dying, but there was such a rich cultural history, new places were opening up, and it ended up being a lot more optimistic than they thought. Um, but through 100 hours of interviews, the book captures how these bars continue to function as sites of community, survival, and chosen family. So they highlight spots like Chicago spot, Nobody's Darling, Frankie's in Oklahoma City, um, and Reds in East LA. This has trade reviews already from Publishers Weekly, Book Page, and Kirkus. And this comes out in a few weeks as well. Next slide, please. Um, No One Loves an Angry Woman by Gemma Hartley. Um, Examines evangelical purity culture, trauma, and woman's anger. Hartley, who you may have heard of from her previous book, Fed Up, a few years ago, which talked about emotional labor, grew up in an evangelical household where obedience and self-sacrifice were the central expectations for women. After experiencing a sexual assault as a teenager, she began confronting the ways religion, gender, and cultural expectations had shaped her understanding of guilt, silence, and rage. And one of the central reframings of this book is the idea that women's anger is not sinful and dangerous. It's information, and it's often the most rational response that there is. But this is not just a religious book at all. It will resonate with people whether or not they've set foot in a church before. It will make you rage and cry, but it's so beautifully written. It's so fabulous. We've already received glowing blurbs from Tia Levings, Kate Mann, Soraya Shamali, Amanda Montell, among others. And the author is also very interested in doing library events, wherever possible. So definitely reach out to me if that's something that you are interested in. And this book comes out in September. And I should say for all of these, we do have galleys available, both physical. If you email me, I can send them to you, or on ARCs or up on Edelweiss and places like that. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Um, so this is Strung Up by Dr. Stacey Patton, and it is definitely the most difficult and emotionally heavy title that I'm mentioning today, but one of the most significant. This book examines lynching not only as a racial terror, but basically as a system of social conditioning that normalized violence against Black children. And so the author, Stacey Patton, traces connections between European traditions of public brutality and the development of an American white supremacist violence. Um, and the thing that distinguishes this book is its focus on childhood, both the Black children subjected to violence and the white children exposed to the systems that normalize cruelty. It's deeply researched, historically grounded, and obviously unsettling. But I also will say this book is generating enormous interest. 5 months before publication, it already has about 800 pre-orders, which is exceptionally rare. And I think that speaks to both the urgency of the subject and to Patton's reputation as a scholar and advocate. This is really likely to become an important text in African American history, race studies, and discussions of historical violence and memory that comes out in October. And then next slide, please. Um, and last but not least, Love Never Dies. This is also a really fun one. Written by a romance editor at Harlequin. This book explores the overlap between horror and romance films and asks why those genres are so intertwined. It looks from at movies ranging from Dracula to Halloween to Rosemary's Baby, and examines ideas like the dark moment in romance structure, why Jamie Lee Curtis's character survives Halloween, partly because she's outside the romantic framework, and how monster romance often becomes a way for us to talk about taboo desires, fear, gender power. There's a lot of excitement about this book internally because it combines really sharp cultural criticism with accessible pop culture analysis, and it's arriving in October, right in time for spooky season. So there's a lot of excitement in-house for this one as well. This is another fun one. Um, but so I think my time is up. So if you could go to the next slide. Um, oh, this is we also have Beacon Classics, which are repackaging of some of our most beloved and storied titles in celebration of our 175th anniversary that's coming up in a few years. But so I think that's it for me. But we have the galleys of most of these books in already, and they're on Edelweiss. But please email me, let me know if there's anything that you're interested in, any books, or just if I can help in any way. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Next up, Rudy Martinez. Rudy is the director of marketing at Soho Press, where he has worked for over a decade promoting titles from the Soho Press, Soho Crime, Soho Teen, and Hell's Hundred imprints. He is based in New York City. Take it away, Rudy.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be talking to you about some forthcoming titles from our adult imprints, Soho Crime, Soho Press, and Hell's Hundred, our new horror imprint. Let's get to it. Let's hop right in. First up, okay, this is a big one. This is the long-awaited next and final installment in Jasper Ford's Thursday Next series. It's called Dark Reading Matter. If you're not familiar with this internationally best-selling series, which started with the Air Affair in 2003, it follows literary detective Thursday Next in a world where literature and reality are one and the same. This is a fan favorite, genre exploding, extremely madcap, meta fictional series that I'm actually under strict embargo not to spoil anything about whatsoever. Jasper fans can be assured that after 13 years since the last Thursday Next novel, they're in for a serious treat that is 100% worth the wait all the way until pub day. But what I can say is this. Thursday knows that this is the last book that she's going to be appearing in, but her oldest and most dangerous foes also know this, and they are plotting to make Dark Reading Matter, the book I'm pitching to you right now, unpublishable. I assure you that we will be publishing it. I don't have this one available as a galley or an Edelweiss or NetGalley. Again, we're keeping it locked down. It's Dark Reading Matter by Jasper Ford. This is going to be huge. I hope everyone's excited. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, Lovers Triple X. This is from the author of Aesthetica, Ali Rowbottom, and it tells the story of two teenage friends, Jude and Winnie, who are dreaming of this world that's far away from their little suburban Southern California town, and they end up finding one another for a moment in the neon glow of LA's booming porn industry in the 1980s. So the first book, or the first half of the book rather, opens as Jude dramatically escapes this abusive relationship with a small-time criminal and finds Winnie working at a strip club. So Winnie's proximity to this world of adult entertainment opens this previously imagined path for Jude, where she finds this freedom that she's been hoping for a long time in the form of a job at an adult film studio. Soon, Jude's in deep in the industry, and after this kind of brutally cutthroat personal and professional decision at the cost of her friends and Winnie, who's now become more than a friend, Jude turns her back on everyone and they cut ties. So the second half of the novel takes place 30 years later. It revisits these same events from Winnie's perspective. So Winnie's now a writer and she's taking stock of what led to their break and the pain and the trouble that her friend found when she was trying to sort of make this life that was just hers on her own terms. This book is sexy and explicit and gritty without being lurid. And at its heart, it's really a moving ode to the value of friendship. And Allie's got this really incredible style, really punchy, stripped down prose that's electric. It's totally alive. She's a spectacular author. I think this is such a great offering from our literary list. Think about this one for readers of Mary Gateskill, Madeline Cash, Emma Klein, Rachel Kushner. That's Lovers Triple X. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, moving on to our Soho crime list. This is all mysteries and thrillers. I've got a new mystery from Robin Geigel, All We Hide. So Robin is a new author on our Soho crime list who you may recognize from another series, the Erin McCabe legal thrillers. We could not be happier to have her with us. This is a really exciting new moment for us. So All We Hide introduces a spectacular character, Investigator Lieutenant Lauren Kelly, and it puts her into this classic procedural construct. She's an outsider cop. She's looking into a cold case murder that no one wants to see reopened. But what sort of results from this kind of very, again, classic setup is an unusually complex weaving of disparate storylines into this deeply felt, compassionate, and truly surprising conclusion. So after coming out late in life as a trans woman in a red state and an even redder county, Lauren, our protagonist, has been exiled to the cold case unit with the hopes from her superiors that she's going to stay busy, she'll stay out of sight until her pending retirement. But she's this dogged investigator and she's intent on uncovering the truth in the murder of a woman named Sherry Darling, who was a trans sex worker and former classmate whose case was quickly declared solved and collected into a box, shelved away for decades. So what Lauren actually finds is that the circumstances of Sherry's death not only point to this kind of county-wide conspiracy, but that her own father, a retired police detective now suffering from Alzheimer's, may have been involved in that cover-up. What really sets this book apart is this incredible character of Lauren Kelly, who lives both her personal and professional life dedicated to truth. And despite the danger, personally and professionally, she remains committed throughout to what is real. She is spectacular, razor sharp, deeply humane, sort of like just unapologetic hero. I can't wait to see more of her. Give this one to readers looking for strong, complex trans characters in fiction, as well as anyone who loves a good procedural. Think books by Scott Turow, Lisa Scottoline, Alifair Burke, Michael Connolly. That's All We Hide by Robin Geigel. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, another new author on the Soho crime list, Karen Oden, and this is a debut in a new historical mystery series, An Artful Dodge. So this novel is set in 1879 London, and it follows 20-year-old British jewel thief Kit Jemison, who's a member of this all-female band of burglars who steal from society's, so-called upper class. Kit comes from this family of thieves, but she really wants a new life, and she's planning to make one big final score, get enough to set her sister up in a career outside of this family business of thievery. But her plan is thrown into chaos when Maggie, who's the daughter of her gang's original leader, returns from an Australian penal colony to retake control of, her family's crime syndicate and organize this sort of revenge heist. So Kit is her best asset. Maggie has no intention of letting her leave the fold, even after this score is settled. Karen brings this really just textured feeling, these sights and smells and mood of Victorian London's kind of smoky, dark streets alive. And she arranges this big, fully realized cast of characters really delicately through her plot in a way that I think only the best historical fiction authors can. Give this one to fans of Anne Perry, Sarah Waters, Deanna Rayburn, and Annalee Huber. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, The Hall by veteran crime author Gary Phillips. Gary is the author of the Ivan Monk mysteries and the One Shot Harry historical mysteries. He's also a screenwriter. He writes comics. He's this deep well of classic film and crime fiction knowledge. And just as a total aside, I have had the pleasure of sitting down to dinner with Gary a few times for dinner. Twice Twice, people have just bought us drinks because he sounds so cool when he talks. Whatever. That's a thing for a different time. Amazing person. I love spending time with him, and all of that character shows in his fiction. So The Hall stars a career thief called O'Connor, who's turned decades of ill-gotten gains into a quiet, legitimate life in Southern California. But there's this $20 million stash that's purported to be in a subterranean bunker owned by this tech billionaire. And that just proves to be too lucrative, and it lures him out of retirement. This is pure pulpy goodness elevated by a richly rendered set of flashbacks to O'Connor's life on the streets in South LA at the beginning of his thieving career. So he starts out as this kind of small-time pickpocket, and it starts to grow his career throughout the intervening decades. It's got this amazing cast of characters who O'Connor assembles to help him. You know, it's that classic heist thing. It's like, give me the team. Everybody's got a specialty. It's also got this really satisfying spoonful of eat the rich ethos. It makes the book feel perfect for right now. This one, obviously, readers of Donald Westlake, Ross MacDonald, anybody looking for a good old-fashioned caper, that's The Hall by Gary Phillips. Next slide, please. Okay, a debut on our crime list, The Longest Death by Kevin Jaggernath. This is, if you're keeping track, the third heist novel in a row that I'm presenting from Soho Crimes, what we're unofficially calling the season of the heist. It's this slim, beautiful, small town crime novel set in the 1950s, and it's led by a character named Richard Cobson, who's been content for a little while to skim off the top at his job at a safe deposit company until this new guy comes into town, smooth talking, handsome, Marlon Montgomery, and he shows Richard that there might be a different kind of life outside of their sleepy little suburb together. They fall deeply in love. They concoct a plan to rob the safety deposit company, which is, of course, complicated by this amazing character, a recent divorcee who wants in, and then this disgraced cop who's really desperate to land something big. And of course, in classic noir style, we go from escape fantasy to bad to worse style narration. It's really spectacular. You're going to see tons of classic crime inspiration here. Chandler fans who are looking for a fresh take on the subgenre, Highsmith readers looking for queer stories in the mystery and thriller space. They're all going to take something from The Longest Death. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the last one I'll talk to you all about. A few titles here, important paperbacks that I think, if you didn't have a chance to catch them in hardcover, make sure that you bring them into your collection for paperback. So first up, Zoe Walbrook's Edgar Anthony and Seamus Award-winning debut mystery set in the world of higher education, History Lessons. This mystery stars Daphne Overture, a history professor at a small college who's pulled into the orbit of a murder investigation after this sort of hotshot, kind of annoying colleague of hers in the anthropology department is found dead. They were never close, but when it becomes clear that the killer believes that she has something that belonged to the victim, she forms this sort of unlikely alliance with a police detective and a cop who's now a bookseller. Love that detail to find the killer. Next, Maha Khan Phillips' debut in a series called The Museum Detective. So this is set in contemporary Pakistan, and the novel introduces archaeologist turned sleuth Dr. Guldalani, who's called to this really unusual crime scene in a cave in the middle of the desert that's unearthed this richly appointed mummy. You know, the cops thought they were going there for what was ostensibly a sort of a drug bust, but what they found is this mummy. And it turns out to be a lot less of an antique corpse than the police initially imagined. So our cool museum detective, Dr. Guldalani, gets involved in the case and follows it through to its conclusion. She's an amazing character. I love her. She's going to be back in a new book probably next year. And then finally, David Demchuk's contemporary classic of queer horror, Red X. This is truly in the horror canon. We're so excited to be bringing it back. So it's the story of the queer community in Toronto, in and around the sort of gay village neighborhood in Toronto, that's being targeted by this terrifying supernatural entity. It takes place over decades, and this story that's stretching across all of these different people in all of this time is interspersed with these autobiographical vignettes from David that create this sort of metatextual masterwork that truly deserves its place in kind of the most talked about and most unique horror novels that are kind of from the last 20 years. We are publishing this new edition in the US. It's got new material. It includes an introduction from horror author Gretchen Felker Martin. So excited to have David on the list with another book, Red X. I'm Rudy from Soho. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to me. And of course, be in touch and enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Rudy. Our final presenter will be Julia Pohl Miranda. Julia started working with Drawn and Quarterly a few months after graduating from McGill University, making her way up from intern to co-owner and VP of Marketing and Sales. She grew up in Toronto, Canada, which has one of the best public library systems in the whole world. Bring us home, Julia.
Hi, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Drawn and Quarterly. If you're not familiar with us, we are a comics publisher. We publish some of the most amazing cartoonists from around the world, including people you will have heard of, like Chris Ware and Linda Berry and Adrian Tamina and Tuva Janssen, who did the Moomins, and many people who you may not have heard of. We publish in translation, we publish fiction, we publish nonfiction. The main thing that our comics have in common with one another is that they tend to be by a single person. So it's one person's vision for the whole concept. And they're drawing and they're writing the story. Next slide, please. So here's a little illustration of the Drawn and Quarterly offices. I wanted to invite you to reach out to us. We love to hear from librarians. We have a very active library marketing team, and by that I mean me. And we are very present on social media, on Instagram, Blue Sky. We upload e-galleys to Edelweiss. Select titles are also on NetGalley. I'm happy to send direct links to PDFs. The great thing about comics, one of the many great things about comics, is that you can read them quickly on screen. And also we do send print reading copies on request as well. So don't hesitate to be in touch. My email's up there. Next slide, please. All right, so I focus mostly on fall books for you folks. And our first book is absolutely filthy, hilarious, poignant. It's everything. Lisa Hanawalt is the singular visionary voice behind the everything that made BoJack Horseman funny. She is hilarious. She is responsible for all the visual jokes of the show. She was the production designer on the show. She's also the creator of Tuca and Birdie, which was a very successful animated series as well, that was entirely Lisa's vision instead of a collaboration. This is a memoir. It is her first true memoir graphic novel. It's coming out in October. It has blurbs from Miranda July, Lena Dunham, R. Crumb, Samantha Irby, Jillian Tamaki. You can't really get a more star-studded and diverse cast of blurbers, I think, than that. Next slide, please. So, I'm just going to read this comic. Horse girls are used to enduring tiresome questions and innuendo. You like riding horses? What else do you like to ride? Do you love horses because they have big genitals? Is the horse thing a sexual thing? Doesn't Freud have a theory about horse girls? Oh my God, shut the fuck up. It's not about sex. I just like them. Next slide, please. I'll admit that when I'm bored, I usually daydream about either horses or sex. They're the two most mentally engaging things I can imagine. Pick one. Horse fantasy, sex fantasy. Next slide. But I don't combine them. Next slide. The elderly artist spends her days painting peaceful scenes, perfecting her chicken soup recipe, and practicing piano. And she fucks. So clearly, I was not exaggerating about the filthy and funny elements of this book. It's also, she pitched it to us as a book that was funny and dirty and all about horse girls. And when we read it, when she turned it into us and we read it, we realized that it was so much more than that, that this book is really a memoir of her growing into middle age, of her opening up her marriage, of her realizing she has this like long held childhood sexual trauma that she's starting to reckon with. She's struggling with whether or not she wants to have children and how that ties into this bigger problem that she's been sort of avoiding dealing with her whole life. It's this really deep, profound memoir about all of these issues, but it's also this very funny memoir comic about just life and middle age. Next slide. All right, in a completely different tonal shift that really demonstrates the breadth of the medium, we have another nonfiction graphic novel called Major Taylor, The World's Fastest Man by Frederick Noland. We've published many books with Lisa Hannawalt before. This is Frederick Noland's first graphic novel. It is a biography. It is a biography of Major Taylor, who was probably one of the first Black global sports stars. He was sort of the LeBron James of his time. He started breaking world records at age 15, and he went on to be this incredibly inspiring sports superstar who traveled the world biking. And this book has already been featured in Library Journal's graphic novel preview. Next slide, please. It's a JLG pick, and it really is sort of the best kind of comics biography. So many of the biographies, because biographies and nonfiction are the like dominant mode in comics, many of them tend to be really prescriptive and proscriptive about the way that they're telling someone's life. Frederick Noland himself is a bicyclist. He's a Black bicyclist who lives in Oakland, California, and he just brings so much love for the art of biking and so much love for this person who came up during the darkest moments of Jim Crow and had to deal with unfathomable levels of racism. Next slide, please. And he really gives you this deep, deep insight into what it would have taken for Major Taylor to thrive in the early 20th century, despite all the setbacks he faced because of his race. And we have a lot of fancy blurbs for this one as well. Keith Knight says that this is lovingly rendered and exhaustively researched. Jody Rosen says, it's not just one of the greatest stories in the history of sports, it's one of the great American stories, period. Mimi Pond says this is a work of wonder and a true page turner. And Lynn Tolman, who's the Major Taylor Association executive director, says this is the perfect engine to propel the true story of a forgotten champion into legend. Um, I think it's really interesting the way that Fred chose to tell this story. Most biographies are from birth to death or focus on a small period of someone's life. And what Fred really wanted to show was he really wanted to focus on Major Taylor as this icon and this person who had such a deep well of integrity and was so moral about the way he approached his life. So rather than ending at the end of Major Taylor's life, which his life ended very tragically, Nolan is really like he goes from childhood all the way to the end of Major Taylor's last race because he wants to show this legendary sports star at his prime at the end of the book, rather than focusing on the decline that was caused by societal forces outside his control. Next slide, please. And there we go. Next slide, please. Oh, we have more interiors. Okay. All right. Our third title that I wanted to talk about is also a nonfiction graphic novel, also out in October. We have published 4 books by Kumsuk Genri Kim. They are all translated by the fantastic Janet Hong, who has won numerous awards for her translations. They've gotten acclaim from the likes of the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, NPR, The Guardian. And Kumsuk, in her work, is really interested in telling stories of Korean culture for a wider audience. So she does this fantastic job of telling you about the history of the place that she's from in this really emotional, powerful way. And Kumsuk herself lives on an island that is within view of the demilitarized zone between South and North Korea. And she has this interesting element, which is that she lives there, but also she was educated in Europe, much like Kim Jong-un. And so she kind of takes this opportunity to think about this North Korean dictator who was educated in Europe and had all these similar opportunities to Kim Suk, and who she had a lot of like hope for when he came into power, that maybe because he had those experiences, he would be coming to the conflict in a new way. And she conducts this book by interviewing people who knew him, friends who went to school with him, defectors from North Korea, and just a whole diversity of different people trying to understand how this person can do what he does. Next slide, please. And you can see here she really takes you through the key elements in Kim Jong-un's life and his rise to power, but she also tries to show him as a person and try to understand where he's coming from as a person. So this is a sequence where she's speaking to somebody who went to school with Kim Jong-un. And she has this really beautiful way of telling her stories that it's a really inviting cartooning style, I think, as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've reached the end of my time. I just wanted to give 2 shout outs for spring books since I focused on fall and everyone else focused on summer books. This is our lead title of the spring. It is Charity and Sylvia by Tilly Walden. It is fantastic. It is a 200-year-old true love story about queer women in Vermont in the 1900s. It's steamy, it's heartbreaking, it's beautiful. And then the last thing I wanted to tell you about is Opioids and Organs by Arizona O'Neill. This is a really affecting graphic novel debut by a cartoonist who, it's the true story of her father's overdose from opioids and her decision to donate his organs, and then her really reckoning with the kind of flawed and problematic and very classist history of medical experimentation and whose bodies are valued and whose bodies aren't valued. These are just a few of the amazing books that we publish at Drawn and Quarterly, and I want to say thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions about any of these titles, feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia, and a huge thank you to all of today's wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, slide presentation, title list, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past programs and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. You can also find out about the latest webinars on our social channels. 150 years of empowering library professionals, advancing access to knowledge, and protecting the freedom to read. Since 1876, the American Library Association has embodied America's aspiration for knowledge and democracy, championing the professionals who make that promise real every day. Scan the QR code on the screen or visit ala150.org to learn how you can join us in helping to shape the next 150 years of libraries. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and a huge thank you to our panelists and sponsors, Bloomsbury Publishing, Beacon Press, Soho Press, and Drawden Quarterly. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.